What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have an exciting video I think you guys are going to like. I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite Cinema 4D plugins. So this is going to be great for those of you that are first starting out with C4D, or maybe you're intermediate but you're looking for some more creative plugins, things you can do. And I'm not going to give you a full tutorial on every single plugin which is in this list. I'm just going to give you a brief breakdown, a general overview. I'm also going to show you step by step some cool little setups that I like to do, and I'm going to point you to some useful tutorials and other materials that are going to help you along the way. Also, another added bonus, I tried to put in as many free plugins as I could. The ones that are paid, I'm also going to mention a free little similar alternative, those of you that don't want to spend any money. And that's pretty much it. I also want to mention that tomorrow I'm going to be dropping my 3D beginner starter pack, which is going to give you guys a bunch of awesome digitally sculpted 3D models as well as textures. And I'm excited about that because you can use that in anything like C4D, Blender, even use it in After Effects with Element 3D or one of those Red Giant plugins where you can bring in simple 3D OBJ files. So that's going to up your game a huge amount. Keep on the lookout for that, dropping on my website tomorrow, MediaMonopoly.co. Anyways, let's get right into the video. So the first plugin we're going to talk about is actually 3 different plugins, and that's because I want to mention the third-party renderer plugins, which are pretty key and pretty useful for using Cinema 4D or any other 3D software. So my favorite is Octane. Two of the other big ones are Arnold and Redshift. And the reason why I think you guys should look into these third-party renderer plugins first, they're going to give you a lot of super useful tools, which is going to help a huge amount. So here's what C4D looks like normally. What we're going to do is let's open up a little live viewer window, and this is probably one of the best features you can do. This is why I recommend that you guys look into a third-party renderer first. Having this little live viewer window where you change something and you see what it's going to look like rendered out in real time is just very, very useful, especially when it comes to designing the scene. Knowing generally what it's going to look like when it's rendered, it's just very useful. So not only do you get the live viewer with these 3D renderers, but when you are going to render, you can change your actual render to Octane, Arnold, whatever it is, Redshift, and that'll actually utilize your graphics card instead of your CPU to render out these scenes, which is going to help a lot more in terms of speeds and in terms of the complexity that you can get with the scene. Also, things like Octane, Arnold, and Redshift usually come with their own lighting kits, which is pretty awesome. So if I go to Objects, Lights, you can put in an Octane Daylight, an Octane Area Light, Targeted Light, whatever it is, and you can light your scenes according to that. And it really does depend on what renderer you use. Like I said, I like Octane the best because there's a lot of cool stuff. Also, most of them will come with a camera, which you can put in here. So this post-processing, if we open that, we can enable it, and you'll see the first thing that it does is just add this cool glow over all of our light sources. Another thing is with Octane, you can create materials. You can create materials which are different from actual normal materials. They're based for Octane, so we create an Octane material. And within here, you can do some cool stuff like, for example, create a black body emission, which is basically a light, and you can change your temperature, change the power, so that we get this cool glow. A lot of awesome stuff you can do within Octane. Not only that, but just within Octane specifically, you get Octane Scatter, which is basically like a MoGraph cloner, where you can scatter things across a plane to make a bunch of them. Fog volumes, tune shaders, HDRI environments, textured environments. Arnold, you get your Arnold Sky. You also get Arnold Lights, IPR window, which is similar to Octane, where you can see what's happening in real time. Well, as depending on what renderer you go with, there's different options for each. We'll talk about this Arnold volume and some other cool stuff later on. I'm probably least familiar with Redshift, but there are some really awesome things you can do with Redshift that are mentioned in a bunch of different tutorials, so check out the description. So now that we mentioned that, like I said, definitely look into it. You can get monthly subscriptions for using these plugins, so it's not too expensive. Let's talk about some more of the creative specific plugins that we have for this video. Let's go over to my plugins bin here and let's just go down. So Forster, this is one of my favorite ones. Let's go ahead and open up this so we can put in either tree, flowers, rocks. It also comes with its own little cloner. Let's just drop in a tree and you can see what's going on here. If we go down to my objects menu that you're seeing in the bottom right, you have a bunch of different trees that you can use, and this is probably one of my favorite plugins because there's a huge amount of options that you have for being able to change this up. If you see these little tabs, you can actually change each of the branch levels. You have sliders, so you can really customize the look of the tree very specifically, all the way from the leaves, all the way from the simulation of how they react with things to the tree and trunk parameters. You can even apply snow onto the branches, which creates this tree snow, and some other cool things like this hyper wind feature. You turn on wind, and if you press play, you'll see these kind of hover in the wind a little bit, and of course you can change that so that it's crazy. The thing I love about this plugin is you can really go ahead and design beautiful forests and landscapes from scratch using the tools that they give you here, as well as the cloner that they give you. So let me just throw down a quick little plane, and like I said, we're not giving you a a full tutorial. You're going to gain the most from this if you really just research fully what you can do with this. But let's go ahead and just drop let's just drop the Forster cloner onto here. And then we're going to take our tree, make it a child of the cloner. And it's as easy as just clicking on your cloner, go to distribute on geometry right here. Right here you have a little slot for it. Take the plane, drop it in there so that it knows to distribute across the plane. You'll see these little points pop up. And then for the clones to pop up, just go to distribute on geometry and turn off display points. Cloning a huge amount of these, so what we can do is just lower the count. And there you go, just a brief little show of the powers of what you can do. Like I said, look up a full tutorial. You can create some beautiful stuff with Forster. Now, if you guys don't want to spend any money, a great alternative for that is this plugin called Ivy Grower, which I'm going to show you here. A link to this will be below. Create some cool animated growth, 100% free. So download link to that will be below, as well as tutorial on how to use it will be below. So let's hop back into C4D. That was Forster. Let's go ahead and delete both of those. And let's go back up to our plugins. Thrausi. Now this is another one that I really like. Let's go ahead and create a cube. So just click here, create a normal cube. We're also going to go ahead and create a floor. So click and hold, make a floor. Let's grab our cube and just bring it up a bit. And just to give a little bit of differentiation from the floor to our cube, let's go ahead and just take that Octane material we made earlier, drop it on that. And it's a little bit too crazy, so we'll just lower the power so that it's glowing a tiny bit. Alright, so we have our cube. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to use Thrausi, and the cool thing about Thrausi is that it automates a lot of things that you can do normally with the MoGraph fracture or Voronoi fracture that's built into C4D, but it just makes it a lot easier, faster, and you can get some cool looks with it. So let's click on plugins, let's go to Thrausi. Also I want to mention that this is free, so click on Thrausi. Actually we're going to make sure cube selected first, plugins, Thrausi, click here. You can also do it with a building. We're going to select Voronoi instead of random. And then pieces, we're going to select 15. You can mess around with that depending on the look you're going for. Click break now and bam. Pay attention to the left here. It basically just automates doing subdivision surfaces. And like I said, using the fracture MoGraph thing that's under here. And if I hover over here, you're going to see it broke it up. It broke this cube up into different pieces. And all the pieces are here. As you can see, piece 1 through 15. Now you may be wondering why you'd want to do that. Well, let's go ahead and take this cube, place it in the air, and then it automatically puts a dynamics body under there. So if we press play, check this out, bam, it actually fell through the floor. So to fix that, let's select the floor, right click, let's go to simulation tags and drop a rigid body onto there. Now press play. Bam, shatters all across the floor. You guys can literally shatter any kind of object. And if you think about this from a music video type of thing, you can create some really awesome stuff just using this. Now, there's some different things that you can do with this. Say, for example, you don't want it to fall and shatter as soon as you press play. You can click on Thrausi and you can change the trigger, which you have here, from immediately to on collision. So now that that's on collision, let's go ahead and create a sphere. So click and hold on our objects and create a sphere. And we'll move it over here. We're going to go ahead and line this up. And we can even scale this down. So it's just kind of like a little ball. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to click this auto keying button right here so that any movement we make, it's going to create a keyframe for that. Let's scroll to around 50 in our timeline and then just take the sphere and make it move through the cube. Now you'll see it's created keyframes for that. We can turn off auto keying now. Press play, you'll see the sphere move through the cube just like that. But to actually start that collision, that dynamic collision, what we need to do is right click on our sphere and just go to simulation tags, collider body. Now when we press play, bam, you'll see the ball really creates this giant awesome shattering. So there really is a lot that you guys can do with that. So that was a cool little fracture plugin. So next we're going to talk about some spline plugins. You can do a lot with this and you can create some really cool things using splines and some plugins that are built especially for splines. So we're going to talk about two. So we're going to talk about TopoWire, which is the main plugin that we're going to mention. This is something like 20-30 bucks. It's super cheap. For those of you that don't want to spend the money, there's also a similar plugin which can create some cool stuff with splines, and that is called Reaper 2.0 or Reaper X, and that is 100% free. So let's start with TopoWire. The reason why I like this is you just click on it, you just click on your plugins, you open up the TopoWire object, and then we can go ahead and create two cubes. So let's create one here, and then let's create one over here. And let's apply our texture onto here so that we can differentiate. Now what we can do is we can take these cubes and we can both make them, and we can drag and make them a child of our TopoWire object, and then click on TopoWire. Actually, I don't think that was made a child. There we go. Now it's a child, and you'll see these crazy little spline string things pop up here. Now, if you want the geometry to stay the same, what you can do is just copy both of your cube or whatever it is you're trying to put in TopoWire and just paste it, and it'll show up. So now you have the geometry and the splines. And for it to actually pop up in our viewer windows, click on TopoWire, go to generate, and then check thickness. And you'll see the actual geometry being created. So that's a cool little thing you can do, and you can change the radius for the thickness. You can go over to object and you can put down the points if you don't want that many wires. And the cool thing about this is if you select one of these cubes like this and you actually move it around, you see that the splines are following and reacting to where the cube is. And say for example you want to bring in another cube and put it in a third and really have the wires reacting all the way to that. So it's really cool, especially if you're designing some kind of like sci-fi scene or maybe like an alley scene. Cool hanging splines that are connected to different objects. Another awesome feature of this plugin, let's click on our TopoWire object again, and we're going to go over to generate. We can click generate dynamic spline. I know that my face cam's covering it, but click this button here and you're going to see it go away, but it also creates an actual spline here named TopoWire. And if we press play, you guys are going to see that now it's reacting to physics. It's actually bouncing. It's reacting to that. If you put a fan in there, some sort of collider or whatever it is, it would react in that way. So it's giving you that lifelike kind of feel. If you want it to pop up into Octane or any other third-party renderer, all you need to do is just select the spline here, right click, go to C4D Octane tags or C4D Arnold tags, and usually they'll have this little object tag which you can place here, and then select your object tag. This is hair, so we can render it as hair, and then we'll bump up the root and the thickness, and there you go. Now we have dynamic splines using TopoWire within Octane, which is pretty cool. So that's about like $20. I talk about Reaper X, which is the free spline plugin I want to mention. I also want to just quickly show you, this is made by someone named Merk Vilson. He also creates some other cool plugins like Snap to Floor, Topoformer, which is cool in terms of changing geometry like this. I'm going to leave his store and his Patreon below. So let's hop back into C4D. Now let's go ahead and talk about Reaper X. So this one is actually very easy. Like I said, it's free. Download link is in the description. Let's go ahead and hold down here where our spline section is, and let's create something like a helix. And then for this helix, let's go ahead and rotate it. And let's bring it up a bit so that we can see it clearly. Now we're going to click on our helix and we're going to go to our start angle and just bump that up so that we get some more rings in there. And then for our height, let's go ahead and make that higher. So a pretty easy little spring. So to actually activate the plugin is very easy. Just go up to plugins, Reaper 2.0, make the helix a child of your Reaper plugin, and you'll see the geometry pop up. And then you can go ahead and select Reaper, and you get some cool little coiled string looks, but at the same time, what you can do, there's also a lot of really nice animation things that you can do using this. You can change around the strands. So this is some cool things that were made using Reaper. So something like that, 3D tracking in real life, and you mix together like this, that's a cool little creative application that you can do. Now let's just take a quick little break before I show you the next plugin, because I want to show you the general way you're going to be installing these plugins for those of you that may be wondering along the road. So it's pretty easy. All you need to do is right click on Cinema 4D, your shortcut, right click here and go to properties, and then click open file location, and this will just open the program file or wherever you have your Cinema 4D installed. And then you can just go to plugins and then just paste the downloaded folder that you download from these plugin websites here. So it's pretty simple. Now, this is one of my favorite plugins because this is a cool simulation plugin, and I use this in a music video that I did recently, creating some awesome smoke animations and smoke characters. So let's go ahead and just open up the Turbulence container, and then we can click on the coordinates for that and maybe make it like 5 for everything so that it's a little big. I'm gonna make full tutorials talking about this and the exact settings. I just want to give you a little general overview. So we create our Turbulence container, and let's put an object within our container, so something like a cube. And it's as simple as right clicking on our cube, go to Turbulence FD tags and put the emitter tag onto it. And then in our emitter tag, let's just make sure these values are set to something like 1 on their channels. And then we can click on the container, and then in our actual simulation here, also for container, you can change where you want your simulation cache, which is important. But under simulation, these are basically responsible for tweaking the look of the simulation, the smoke and the fire that you're going to be getting. And in terms of rendering, you have your smoke shader and your fire shader. This is also used for tweaking the actual look of how it's going to look, how it's going to react. So for our smoke shader, we can put the channel on density. Fire shader, it should already be on temperature. Also changing up these little graphs does a lot. Then once you're ready, you just go to plugins, Turbulence FD, start cache simulation, and check that out. That looks really cool just in the actual object viewer. You can place that emitter onto any different object, even if it's still or animated like in the examples that I showed you. So that looks pretty awesome. If you want to see what that looks like rendered, let's go ahead and open up a renderer so we can see. So plugins, I'm going to use Arnold because that ties in with what I want to mention next. So you'll see that this has this crazy burning look, and that's what it looks like rendered. Another great thing, the reason why I did show you with Arnold is because Arnold has this little volume object. I use this Arnold volume, and I also use the Arnold object tag, place that onto my Turbulence, and I was able to change around the color of the smoke, which was really cool and key for the look that I was going for. Also, I want to mention, if you don't want to pay for Turbulence FD, since it is a paid plugin, a great alternative to be able to create that awesome looking smoke is to download Houdini Apprentice Edition. There's some great tutorials on how you can use that, which is free software to create some awesome smoke simulations through that, and then import that into Cinema 4D. So that's a great little workaround. Definitely look into that. So that's a little breakdown of Turbulence FD. I want to take this moment to shout out this website, which is going to help you guys a lot. So this website is from a YouTuber and 3D content creator, and on their website you're going to find a bunch of these cool little setups for using Voronoi fracture, for using C4D Octane, for realfow, which is one of the plugins in this list, Turbulence FD, some realfow basic setups. The purpose why I'm showing you this isn't so that you can take this and copy it. It's so that you can take the project files and really study the different things. Maybe take some of the settings that you use with the plugins, apply that to your own scenes you're working on to create some cool stuff. This is a great learning material, and the prices are really cheap. So check out this link, support the creator. There's some really awesome stuff. So anyways, we talked about Turbulence FD. Now let's go ahead and talk about realfow. You can do a lot of awesome stuff with realfow. It's another simulation plugin that involves liquids like that, dynamic liquids, and you can do everything from water to like slime. Let's start off by just creating a plane, and then with realfow it's pretty nice because you can just click on realfow and then just click scene, and it will set it all up for you. For emitters, let's go ahead and just create a circle emitter, and then we can raise that up. And what this basically is this is the area where the liquid is going to fall from. So it's better to watch a full tutorial on talking about this, but there's a bunch of different ways you can use the emitter, like filling objects, splines, triangles, linear. In this daemon section, this is like different effectors that work with the fluid. So magic, surface tension, vortex, wind, and then mesher for when you actually want to create the geometry. And if I press play, that is our actual particles, which is being simulated. So let's change things around before we start creating the mesh and the geometry of the fluid. So what we can do is we can click on fluid, and in this fluid tab you can change the actual look of the fluid, like the resolution. We can bump that up. You can change the type, which is going to give it a different look every time. You also get some realfow tags with this plugin. So let's right click on our cube, go to realfow tags, and place a collider, very similar to just a normal dynamics collider. Let's go ahead and place that on our plane as well. So this time, whenever I press play, you'll see that the particles will hit our cube. It'll react to that using dynamics so that the fluid actually collides in that specific way. Now, once you've gone through with the tutorial and designed the scene, depending on what look you're going for, all you really need to do is just go to meshers, actually go up to realfow and create a mesher. And then in this mesher, click build mesh. Now, once you've done that, once you play the simulation, you're going to see that this is actual geometry that's being created, which is pretty cool. And since we have that collider on, it is reacting with the cube like that. And then of course what you can do is you can create another texture, like a glossy Octane one works well with realfow in my opinion, and you can go ahead and texture it just like that. So let's drop this on our mesh, and there you go. Simple as that. So simple as that. You can create some really cool looking stuff with this. It's an awesome plugin. Really quick, I'm just going to show you in this scene. As you can see, we have some dynamic topo wire splines that are holding up this skull that you can see, as well as we also have this cool realfow mesh that's around the actual skull. And just playing around with this, just learning the plugin, I made it so that when the balls actually hit the skull, all the paint flies everywhere and it reacts to it like a collider. So that's pretty cool. If you want a full breakdown on this, that's going to be coming soon. I've also been messing around with just different things like maybe creating something like this. So this could be something that's coming in the future, a whole breakdown of a scene similar to this. Okay, so now let's go ahead and transition from realfow, which is a paid plugin, to a free plugin, and this is Hot 4D. So what we're going to do here is create a simple little plane. And now all you need to do is download Hot 4D, all information down below. Like I said, 100% free. Drop that in there and then make Hot 4D a child of the plane. And then you can go ahead and change a bunch of the settings to make realistic looking water. So let's go ahead and change this to like 500 by 500 for the segments to get more detail in there. And then in Hot 4D, you can do a bunch in terms of changing the look. Like I said, look up a full tutorial for more info. Links will be down in the description. And you can do something like keyframe the time to make this kind of flow like that. Here's another little example of what you can do with Hot 4D. I think that looks really great, and they have tutorials on how you can do that with all the info linked down below. So Hot 4D. Also, another little cool thing is I mentioned before that you could use Houdini to create smoke if you didn't want to purchase Turbulence FD. This free plugin, Hot 4D, HOT stands for Houdini Ocean Toolkit. So basically what they did was they took the Ocean Toolkit, which existed within Houdini, and they ported it over for C4D. So that's another cool little way that Houdini and C4D can kind of coexist, and you can use different things for both. Okay guys, so we talked about a bunch of different things like third-party renders like Octane, Redshift, Arnold. We talked about some simulation plugins like Turbulence FD for fire and smoke, realfow for fluids. We talked about creative things like Forster, Ivy Grower. We talked about spline plugins like TopoWire and like Reaper X. Last two things I want to mention. Let's get into number 9. And number 9 isn't actually a specific plugin I want to talk about. It's more of a group of plugins. If you guys don't know about Greyscale Gorilla, definitely get on that. Probably one of the #1 channels for 3D on YouTube. Here's just a little video showing some of their transform presets. The one that I like to use a lot is their HDRI link, which you can get right here, which basically links HDRIs to ones that they have saved on their website. So if we actually go on their website, you're gonna see that there is endless plugins which you guys can shop for and look for. So I did wanna mention them as number 9. And then for our 10th and final plugin that I wanna talk about is xparticles. And I don't have xparticles yet myself. I've tried it out, but I am yet to get it on this specific rig. When I do, I'm planning on making some cool tutorials, but I wanted to include this because it's probably one of the best particle plugins out there where you can create some cool just normal particle effects, smoke and fire, fluids and grains, cloth. It's similar to something like Krakatoa where you can really get that movie quality, like crazy particle things going on, and I'm going to create some more future tutorials talking about that in specific. But look into xparticles. Definitely check out Greyscale Gorilla's plugins. Other than that, guys, that is my list of top 10 plugins. You're definitely going to find some value somewhere through this. Hopefully, I taught you guys something new. If you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Like I said, tomorrow my 3D starter pack is going to drop, so we're getting you guys a bunch of cheap 3D models to use for your projects, music videos, whatever it is, as well as some cool textures and other things like that. And the great thing I like about this channel is it basically just reflects what I'm learning at the moment. So we talked about Premiere, we talked about After Effects. Now we're branching out into animation, like some of my past videos, some 3D stuff using C4D, maybe even Blender. We talked about Element 3D. I'm excited to be able to share these things as I learn them and hopefully inspire you guys to go on whatever path it is that you like. If you're not into 3D, maybe you're more into animation, we're always going to be putting out a variety of different things. Today was C4D and tomorrow my pack is dropping, but after that, probably going to talk about some more Premiere, After Effects stuff, maybe some animation stuff. So let me know what you want to see in the comment section down below, guys. As always, thank you so much for supporting. Thank you so much for watching. All relevant links are going to be down in the description. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.